The night was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed on the ears and made the crack of every branch sound louder than it should. Snow covered the ground in thick layers, muffling even the crunch of boots. He had built his cabin in this remote forest to escape the noise of the world, to live with nothing but the fire, the trees, and his own company. Solitude was his choice, his fortress, and he guarded it fiercely. That evening he sat by the fire, a mug of steaming coffee in his hands. When the silence outside broke, it was faint at first, a scraping sound, like something moving through the snow. His brow tightened. No one should have been out there, no hiker, no hunter, no curious neighbor. He was 10 miles from the nearest road, yet the sound came again. Closer this time, a soft drag that did not belong to deer or wolf. He set his mug down slowly and reached for the rifle hanging near the door. His breath clouded in the air as he opened it a crack, the cold rushing in, biting at his skin. At first he saw nothing, just the endless dark of the woods and the pale blanket of snow glinting under moonlight. Then his eyes caught movement. A figure stood just beyond the tree line, unmoving, watching. His heart thudded hard in his chest, a warning beat. He gripped the rifle tighter and stepped onto the porch. The snow creaking under his weight. The figure stepped forward into the light. It was a woman. Her clothes shimmered faintly, as if woven with threads of glass that caught the moon. Hair fell in tangled strands, half covered in frost. Her skin was pale, her lips nearly blue, yet her eyes glowed faintly. Catching the light like a predator's, she stumbled toward him, her breath ragged. But when she reached the edge of his porch, she did not ask for help. She did not beg for warmth or food. Instead, she looked him directly in the eye and said, her voice low but steady, "This is our home now." For a moment he froze, uncertain if he had heard her correctly. "What?" he asked, his voice sharp, the rifle still raised. She swayed, on her feet, but her expression did not falter. "This place, this cabin, it belongs to us." Her words chilled him more than the night air. He had built this cabin with his own hands, log by log, nail by nail, a place carved from the wilderness to belong only to him. No one else knew about it. No one else was supposed to. Yet here she stood, speaking as though she had been here all along. He kept the rifle pointed at her chest. "You're trespassing," he said firmly. "Turn around and walk back the way you came." But she shook her head, slowly, like a stubborn child refusing to move. The strange glow in her eyes deepened, as though fueled by his anger. "No, I won't leave. This is ours. It has always been ours." The fire behind him popped, showering sparks, but the cold gnawed at his back as he stood blocking the doorway. Every instinct told him to force her away, to slam the door and lock it. Yet something in her voice, and the calm certainty with which she spoke, rooted him to the spot. She was not begging, not even threatening. She was stating a fact, and part of him, against his will, believed it. He lowered the rifle slightly, though not completely. "Who are you?" he asked. Her lips curled in a faint smile that was more sad than warm. "You will know soon enough," she whispered. Then her legs gave way, and she collapsed forward into the snow. For a long moment he did not move, his breath sharp in his chest. He could leave her there, let the forest claim her, pretend she had never come. It was the simplest choice, yet his hand moved on its own, lowering the rifle and crouching beside her. Her body was icy cold, but still alive, a weak pulse beating against her throat. With a growl of frustration, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than she looked, almost weightless, as though her bones were hollow. He carried her inside, and laid her on the old couch by the fire. Her strange clothes shimmered faintly in the flickering light, the fabric unlike anything he had seen in his life. He pulled a blanket over her and sat back, rifle across his lap, his eyes never leaving. Her face. She slept, Tora seemed to, but her lips kept moving as though whispering words in a language he could not understand. Hours passed. The fire burned low, and outside the forest grew darker, quieter, almost holding its breath. He knew one thing. With absolute certainty, the life he had built for himself, the silence he had fought to protect, was gone. Whatever she was, whoever she was. She had brought something with her into his cabin, something that would not leave again. And in the stillness of the night, her words echoed in his mind like a curse or a promise. This is our home now. The morning came gray and heavy, clouds stretching low across the treetops, swallowing the forest in silence. I had hardly slept, his eyes fixed on the woman lying on his couch. At some point during the night, she had stirred, whispering words. In a strange tongue, her breath shallow, but steady. When the first light crept through the frosted window, he expected her to vanish like some dream, some hallucination of the lonely wilderness. But she was still there, wrapped in his blanket. Her body fragile, yet her presence filling the cabin like an unwelcome storm. He rose from his chair, joints aching from the long night, and poured himself coffee. The rifle stayed close, propped against the table, because every nerve in his body told him she was not ordinary. He had lived alone long enough to trust those instincts. People did not wander into forests like this, not in winter, not miles from any road, and they certainly did not appear in shimmering clothes with eyes that glowed faintly even when they slept. He was halfway through his first sip when her eyes opened. He froze. The glow was weaker now, but still there, like embers that refused. To die? She blinked at him, calm, steady, then sat up slowly, as though her bones ached. He expected confusion, fear, even a plea for help. But instead, her gaze swept across the cabin, the stove. The shelves, the stack of firewood, and her lips curved into the faintest smile. "It's still here," she whispered. "What's still here?" he asked, his voice tight. He hadn't moved, coffee cup still in hand, though his eyes flicked toward the rifle. She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. The walls, the fire, the shape of the place. "It hasn't changed." He set the cup down hard, the sound sharp in the quiet. "Listen," he said firmly, "I don't know who you are or what you think this place is, but I built this cabin with my own hands. Mine, not yours, not ours." His words cut through the air, but she didn't flinch. She only tilted her head, studying him, as though weighing his very soul. "You think you built it," she said softly, "but it was always waiting for both of us." The calm certainty of her voice made his skin crawl. He stepped closer, gripping the back of a chair like it could anchor him. "What do you mean waiting?" he demanded. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked toward the window, the gray light spilling across her pale face. "Do you hear it?" she asked quietly. He frowned, straining his ears. The forest was silent. No birds. No wind. Only the faint groan of the old wood in the walls. "There's nothing," he said. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time, he saw fear flicker there, quick but sharp. "That's the warning," she whispered. "The forest is holding its breath." The words struck him like a cold wind, though he didn't understand why. He had spent winters here before, lived through storms and nights when the woods went still. But something about her tone, about the way her gaze lingered on the tree line outside, unsettled him. He shook his head, trying to push it away. "You need to leave," he said, his voice harsher now. "Whatever this is, whatever you're running from, it's not my problem." Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something closer to pity. "I can't leave," she said. "Right there." "Can you? Not now?" He took a step back, his hand brushing against the rifle. "Watch me," he muttered. He grabbed his coat and swung open the door, icy air blasting into the cabin. But the moment he stepped onto the porch, he stopped. The forest stretched before him, endless and dark. But something was wrong. The silence wasn't just silence. It was too complete, too heavy, like a weight pressing down from the sky itself. Even the snow seemed to resist crunching under his boots. He scanned the tree line, his heart hammering. No tracks, no movement, not even the faint rustle of branches. It was as though the world had frozen mid-breath. Then from deep in the woods came a sound. Not loud, but sharp-like, wood splitting under too much pressure. He whipped his head toward it, eyes narrowing. Another crack followed, closer, and then another, echoing through the trees. Something was moving out there, something big. he felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. Slowly, he backed toward the door, rifle ready in his hands. The woman was standing now, her blanket slipping from her shoulders, her strange clothes shimmering faintly again in the dim light. "Oh." She looked at him, then at the forest, and spoke with quiet certainty. "Oh." "They found us." The words made his blood run cold. "Who?" demanded. She met his eyes, and in them he saw not fear, but grim acceptance. "The ones who never wanted us to be together," she said. He opened his mouth to question her, to demand answers, but another sound cut through the woods, a deep, resonant thud, like footsteps too heavy to belong to any human. The trees trembled. The silence cracked. His hands tightened on the rifle as the truth sank in. Whatever had followed her here, whatever had been waiting in the frozen woods, was coming for them both. And for the first time since building the cabin, he felt his sanctuary shift into something else entirely, not a refuge, but a trap. The storm rolled in by evening, thick snow whipping through the trees, the sky low and bruised. The cabin groaned under the weight of the wind, but inside, the fire burned bright, throwing shadows across the walls. He had barred the door, checked the windows twice, and loaded his rifle again, even though the chamber was already full. Every instinct told him to leave, to push through the storm and get as far from this place as he could. But something in the woman's eyes held him some quiet gravity, like she knew what waited beyond the tree line better than he ever could. She sat near the fire, her body still weak, her strange clothes glowing faintly with the flicker of the flames. She had not spoken much since the sound in the woods, but her gaze never left the window. It was as though she was waiting for something or someone. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're going to tell me what's out there." His voice was low, firm, but a thread of unease wove through it. Her head turned slowly, eyes glinting with tired light. "Not what?" she said softly. "Who?" He frowned. "People out here?" "Out here." She shook her head once. "Not your kind." "Not mine either. They were made to erase us both. They don't stop. They don't feel. They only hunt." The way she said it chilled him. "So what?" he snapped. "They're after you, and now I'm just caught in it. You've built this place. You chose this ground. You think it was your own will? But it's more than that. This cabin, these walls, they called both of us here, they tied us together before you ever saw me." He stared at her, anger bubbling, but the weight in her words made his chest tighten. He wanted to call her insane, a liar, at the silence of the forest, the unnatural cracks in the trees, the heavy footsteps. They all gnawed at him. Then the noise came again. Not from far away this time. Sharp, splintering crack tore through the night, followed by another, closer, heavier. He gripped the rifle tighter, his palms slick. The woman rose unsteadily to her feet, moving to the window. "They've circled," she whispered. "The storm slows them, but not for long." He forced himself to step closer, peering out. Snow whipped through the trees, obscuring everything in shifting white. For a moment, he thought she was wrong. Nothing moved. Tall, too tall. Its shape was wrong, its shoulders wide and jagged. It stood motionless, half hidden by the storm, but he could feel its gaze burning through the glass. His heart hammered. "What the hell is that?" The woman's hand pressed against the window frame, her breath fogging the glass. "A hunter. One of many. Once they found us, they won't stop." The figure shifted just slightly, and the sound of wood groaning under weight carried through the storm. He jerked back, raising the rifle, but the woman caught his arm. Her grip was weak but steady. "Not yet," she said. "If you fire now, they'll charge. You can't face them all at once." His jaw clenched, frustration boiling over. "Then what do we do? Sit here and wait to die?" Her eyes locked on his, strange and steady, glowing faintly even in the storm's gloom. "No," she whispered. "We wait for the moment, then we strike together." He tore his arm free, pacing. The walls of the cabin suddenly too small, too thin. He had built this place as a sanctuary from the world, a place no one could reach. But now it felt like the center of something larger, something he had never asked to be part of. He looked back at her, and though his gut screamed to push her out, to run, he couldn't. The storm deepened, the howls of the wind rising, but beneath it he began to hear another sound. Not the splitting of trees this time, but a low, rhythmic thrum. Pulse through the ground, through the walls, through his bones. The woman closed her eyes, her face pale but serene. "They've brought the beacon," she said. "They won't. Just hunt us. They'll draw more." He stared at her in disbelief. "More? How many are there?" Her eyes opened again, glowing brighter now, and her voice carried the weight of something ancient, enough to erase a world. The fire snapped, sparks jumping, and he felt the air thicken, charged with unseen force. Outside, the storm raged. But within the shadows of the trees, the hunters were gathering. For the first time in his life, he realized the forest he thought he owned no longer belonged to him at all. It had become a battlefield, and the fight was only beginning. The night dragged on. Every hour stretched thin by the sound of the storm and the hunters pressing closer. The man had not let go of his rifle, his eyes darting to every creak of the cabin, every shadow cast by the fire. The woman stayed by the window, her thin frame steady, her gaze unblinking. She seemed less human as the hours passed, more like a sentinel carved from the storm itself. Then it came again, a crunch. Heavier than footsteps, like something massive settling its weight. The snow outside glowed faintly under the storm, and through the blur of white he saw them. Not one, not two, but half a dozen figures now. They moved unnaturally, their long arms sweeping through the drifts, their bodies flickering as though they were not fully there. He could not make out faces, only the suggestion of eyes, red points burning like embers. He cursed under his breath, his heart thundering. "We can't hold them off," he muttered. "Out. Not in here." The woman finally turned from the window, her eyes sharp. "This cabin isn't just walls and wood. You think you built it, but it was placed here, waiting. For you, it holds power. Old power." He shook his head, unable to keep the bitterness from his voice. "Don't start with riddles now. If you know what's coming, then tell me how to stop it." She moved slowly to the center of the cabin, lowering herself to the floor. Her hand brushed against the wooden planks, tracing the grain as if feeling for something hidden. "The hunters cannot be killed as you kill beasts. Their bodies are only shells. But the ground here, the heart beneath this cabinet, can hurt them. It can drive them back." His chest tightened. "You're saying there's something under this cabin?" Her gaze lifted to his, and she nodded once. "A core, a gate. You built over it without knowing. That's why they've come."
That's
"Why I was drawn here too. If we don't awaken it, this place will fall, and so will you." He stared at her like she had lost her mind. A gate under his cabin? Some buried core of power? But even as the thought seemed impossible, he could not ignore the pounding steps circling the cabin, the red eyes watching from the storm. The world outside had already broken all the rules he thought he knew. The woman pressed her palm flat against the floor. The fire in the hearth flared suddenly, the flames climbing higher, throwing the walls into sharp relief. "They're testing the walls," she whispered. "When they break through, it will be too late." And then, as if her words had summoned it, the first impact struck. A deafening crack shook the cabin, the door shuddering in its frame. Snow burst inward through the seams, and a long, jagged claw scraped across the wood, leaving a glowing scar. The man raised his rifle, every muscle ready to fire, but the woman shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. "No, the shot will only call them faster. Get to the cellar. There's nothing down there but storage," he growled. Her eyes burned with a light that made his blood run cold. "There is more. Trust me, or we die here." The cabin shook again, another strike slamming into the walls. The man cursed, then moved, yanking the hatch open to the cellar. Cold, stale air drifted up, carrying the smell of earth. He grabbed a lantern, its flame trembling, and descended, the woman following close behind. The cellar was small, filled with tools, supplies, jars, and crates. But as the lantern light swept the walls, he froze. The stone at the far end was carved and not natural. Symbols etched deep into the rock pulsed faintly, glowing like veins beneath the earth. The woman stepped past him, her fingers brushing the markings. The glow brightened at her touch, spreading outward like fire crawling through dry grass. "This is the heart," she said. "This is what can turn the hunters back. But it will need both of us." Above them, the cabin groaned violently. The sound of wood splintering rang out, followed by the hollow screech of one of the hunters forcing itself through the gap. The man's stomach lurched. Time was gone. He leveled the rifle toward the hatch, his breath ragged. "What do I do?" Woman turned, her eyes now glowing fully, her face pale but fierce. "Give me your hand. No matter what happens, don't let go." The blows above grew faster, harder, snow and ice shaking loose from the beams. He looked at her, then at the carvings blazing brighter with each heartbeat. His instincts screamed to fight, to run, to shoot, but deep inside, something older told him to trust her. His hand closed around hers. The markings exploded with light, and above them, the hunters let out a sound that was not a scream, not a roar, but something far worse, something that made the forest itself tremble. The cabin above groaned like an old ship breaking apart at sea. Every crash shook dirt from the cellar beams, dust raining over them as the sound of claws raked deeper into the wood. The man gripped the rifle in one hand, the woman's hand in the other, his knuckles white. The glow of the carvings had spread across the cellar wall, burning brighter. Threads of pale light running like veins through the stone. The air thickened, humming with energy, a low vibration that thrummed in his bones. Then the ceiling cracked. Splinters of wood fell, and a monstrous limb forced its way through the floor above. Long and jagged, black as obsidian and dripping. Frost, it wasn't just trying to break in. It was reaching, searching. The man snapped the rifle up, fingered tight on the trigger. But the woman's grip on his hand tightened like iron. Her eyes were wide, glowing brighter, her voice shaking, but steady. "Don't fire. Not yet. The core is waking. Let it finish." He wanted to shout at her, to tell her they didn't have time. But the glow from the wall surged, spilling across the cellar like water. The markings flared brighter until the stone itself split with a crack, and from the fracture came a sound low, deep, like the growl of the earth itself. The hunters above screeched in answer, their cries tearing through the storm. Another crash shook the cabin. The hatch to the cellar burst open, snow and shards of wood spilling down as a hunter dropped halfway through. Its form was warped and twitching, limbs too long. Its head a mask of shifting bone with those blazing red eyes locked on him. The man's instincts screamed to fire. He could feel the weight of the thing pressing against his chest like suffocation. But the woman's voice cut through the panic. "Now, hold tighter. Don't let go." She slammed her other hand against the glowing stone. Light erupted, flooding the cellar in blinding brilliance. The air grew hot, the storm outside roaring as though the forest itself had been struck. The hunter lunged forward, shrieking, its claws stretching toward the man. Then the light surged outward. It wasn't fire. It wasn't heat. It was pressure. A shockwave blasted from the stone, invisible but crushing, slamming into the hunter mid-leap. The creature convulsed, its body twisting, cracking apart into shards of shadow and ice before it could reach them. It dissolved into nothing, its screech torn into silence above. More crashes erupted one after another as the shockwave ripped upward through the cabin. The man heard the walls scream, the roof buckle, and then a chorus of monstrous wails. As the hunters outside were struck, for a moment, it was chaos. Blinding light, shattering wood, the roar of the storm twisting unnaturally. Then, slowly, the noise began to fade. The vibrations in the stone settled into a steady hum. The glow dimmed to a faint pulse. The man blinked against the afterimage, burned into his vision, his ears ringing. He realized he was still gripping her hand so tightly his knuckles ached. His rifle was forgotten at his side. "What? What did we just do?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. The woman's face was pale, her breathing ragged, but her eyes were steady. Fixed on the fading glow of the carvings, we woke the core, drove them back. For now. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. For now. "You mean they'll come back?" Her silence was answer enough. Above them, the storm still howled, but the sound of claws and crashing wood was gone. The cabin had taken damage. He could hear the wind slipping through shattered boards, but it still stood. Barely the man let go of her hand and stumbled up the cellar steps, lantern swinging. When he pushed through the wreckage of the hatch and stepped back into what was left of the cabin, his chest clenched. Half the walls were torn open, snow drifted across the floor, and the hearth fire had been smothered. But the hunters, they were gone. No bodies, no blood. Only scorch marks where the light had struck them, and faint trails of frost vanishing into nothing. The woman joined him, her steps slow, her expression unreadable as she scanned the ruin. She touched one of the scorched marks on the wall and frowned. Only destroyed, only driven off. The connection isn't severed. His stomach twisted. So what? We just wait here until they try again? Until the cabin's gone? Gaze lifted to his, sharp as steel. No. Now that the core is awake, we have a chance. But it's only a chance. They will come back stronger with more than shadows. Next time, the storm won't just hide them, it will carry them. He stared at her, disbelief and dread battling in his chest. And you're telling me this is all because I built a cabin in the wrong place? She almost smiled, though there was no humor in it. Not the wrong place, the only place. This was meant for you. The words sank into him like stones. The storm screamed outside, and in the silence between gusts, he realized something terrible. This fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. The night did not end. Hours passed, yet the storm raged like an unbroken war drum. The man sat against the shattered wall of his cabin, his rifle across his lap, staring at the glowing veins in the cellar stone through the open hatch below. Every so often, the pulse flickered, faint as a dying heartbeat, and each time he feared it might vanish altogether. The woman sat nearby, her eyes fixed on the storm outside, her face unreadable, but her body tense, ready, as though she were. Listening to something he could not hear, when dawn should have come, it did not. The sky stayed black, thunder rolling endlessly, the snow whipping sideways in furious sheets. He had lived in this forest long enough to know storms. This wasn't one. It was something alive, something circling. Finally, unable to bear the silence between them, he asked, "What did you mean last night? This cabin was meant for me? What does that mean?" The woman turned her head slowly, her gaze sharp as a blade. "Want to know?" "Yes." His voice cracked with anger and exhaustion. "I built this place with my own hands. I came here to get away from the world, not fight monsters in the dark. Why me? Why here?" Her lips pressed tight before she spoke, her words low, heavy, because this ground has been chosen for centuries. A point between worlds. It's the first humans to settle here marked it, even if they didn't understand why. The core buried beneath isn't just power, it's a doorway. And when the storm comes, it opens. Someone has to be here to hold it shut. His chest felt hollow, his breath thin, so I was just trapped in someone else's fight. "That's what you're saying?" She shook her head. "Not trapped. Chosen, you felt it? It's why you stayed when others left this forest? That's why you built here instead of anywhere else. You may not remember choosing, but the core does. It called you." He wanted to laugh, to curse her, to say it was madness. But deep down, a sick truth stirred in him. Ever since he had first laid eyes on this patch of land, he had felt pulled to it. He told himself it was the peace, the beauty, the distance from people. But now, sitting in the ruins of his cabin with monsters circling outside, he wondered if it had been something else entirely. Before he could answer, the storm shifted. The howling stopped. The forest fell into sudden silence, broken only by the faint crack of ice settling. The woman stood so quickly it startled him. Her eyes blazed with fear. "They're here." He rose, rifle in hand, his blood cold. "Hunters." She shook her head. "No, worse." The cabin shook with a sound that wasn't thunder. It was a heavy, pounding rhythm, like massive footsteps pressing down through the earth itself. The storm above peeled back in a wide circle, revealing a sky not of clouds but of writhing black shapes. The hunters had returned, but now they moved in formation, orbiting something vast. Through the storm stepped a figure. It was tall, humanoid in shape, but wrong in every detail. Its body was made of shifting fragments, black ice and red fire stitched together in a form that mocked a man. Its eyes were the same burning red as the hunter's, but deeper, older, as though the storm itself looked out from within. The woman drew closer to the man, her voice barely a whisper. The herald, the storm's voice. The herald raised an arm, and the hunters howled in unison. The forest bent with the sound, trees snapping, snow ripping upward in sheets. Then it lowered its arm, pointing directly at the cabin. The hunters surged forward. The man fired without thinking. The first round tore through a hunter's chest, but the creature dissolved into smoke and ice, reforming instantly. Another shot. Another, but it was useless. They weren't just shadows anymore. They were bound to the herald's will. The woman shouted over the roar. The core. You have to use it again. He turned toward the cellar, heart racing. I don't know how. You do? Her hand clutched his arm, eyes burning into his. It chose you. Trust it. The hunters hit the cabin like a tidal wave, claws raking through shattered walls, their screeches deafening. The herald stepped closer, each movement bending the storm, its form towering above the treetops. The man grabbed her hand, dragging her toward the cellar. They stumbled down as the cabin splintered overhead, wood tearing like paper. Hunters swarmed the opening, their claws scraping at the stone as they forced their way inside. The glow in the cellar walls flared. Brighter than before, the hum grew. Louder, vibrating through his chest until it rattled his teeth. He reached toward the carvings, his hand shaking. The hunters lunged in the moment his palm touched the stone. The world exploded in light. The cellar vanished around him. Storm dissolved, stood in a void of shifting colors, threads of light weaving around him, and in that place he heard it. A voice deep and endless, not in words but in meaning. Guardian. When his eyes snapped open, the cellar was still there. The woman was at his side, clutching him, her face pale but alive. The hunters had been driven back again, torn apart by the blast. But this time, the herald still stood above, untouched. Watching through the shattered roof with burning eyes, it smiled. The storm screamed louder than ever,